Mhm. Welcome to the Becoming Room, a space where people learn how to grow through what they're growing through. I'm Kiara,
And I'm Sandra.
and last week we introduced ourselves and talked a little bit about why we started a faith based journey. This week we're going to dive a little bit deeper. So come on in and take a seat.
Yes,
So this week we're going to check in. We're going to check in with ourselves. If life forced you back into the darkest season you've ever experienced, what would you do differently now? What would you do differently now? Hmm. I'd go outside more. I would
yeah,
I would definitely go outside more. I'd move my body even when I didn't feel like it. Um, I would spend less time worrying about what's leaving as opposed to what God has coming my way. Um,
I like
and I
that.
learned to trust myself more. I learned to trust myself more. Miss Sandra, if life forced you back into the darkest season you ever experienced, what would you do differently now?
I asked for help immediately.
Mm,
Do not pass go, do not collect $200. I would ask for professional help, which I never thought that I would ever do, but I would do that first and foremost. And then I would ask for support from family and friends instead of isolating. I definitely would begin my self-development journey. And I'd start reading the word a lot more.
mm,
So, okay, all right, family, let's get to the heart of the matter. Okay. Um, what was your darkest space, Key?
what was my dark space? I believe a dark space can be more of a season than a moment. So, because a few different times come to mind, right? All of those times have in common, or what all of those seasons have in common, are grief, overindulging, and looking for an escape. So, and we know what we do when we're grieving, right? We may overindulge in people, places, food, drugs, liquor. If we're looking for an escape, that could also be people, places, food, drugs, and liquor. And you can be grieving relationships, ideas. You could be grieving anything. So a lot of the dark spaces that I have grown through all consisted of grief, overindulging, and looking for an escape. What about you?
Oh, well, as you said, the season is really, really important for me as well. My season started decades before it ended, and mine started with experience death of family members at a young age, 19 to be specific. Uh, And just what that took, what each and every day took for me to get through those days without my mom and then without my dad and then without my brother.
Mm,
And each time, um, just as you said, my grieving or my sadness just grew and grew until it spiraled out of control. And decades later, the bottom hit, and I mean that literally and figuratively.
mm,
Ending up in the basement of my now husband's, uh, mother's house, and so, I realized I got stuck, and I knew that my life was, worth or better than that, and so I just the dark space, I was going outside and coming right back in, and it was just like a over and over, like, it was always like a hamster on in a wheel,
mm,
and so, yeah, just that feeling of just being stuck and not knowing how to get out of that, and it just was just so dark. Uh,
mhm,
I couldn't get the light, so,
mm.
yeah, yeah.
What made that season dark?
Well, for me, like I said, it was decades and it went full circle. I went from owning a home with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, uh, to living in several different apartments, all different, scales of apartments, from pretty nice to pretty shady. Um, and not you just not being able to take care of myself. I was working throughout that whole thing, throughout that whole season, and just couldn't take care of myself. I ended up living in the basement, not paying rent, and basically, living on someone else's, dime and by someone else's rules. And so
Mm,
that was my truest start. Not to mention that if anybody's lived in a basement, it's one window, and even if you open at that window, the light never comes in. And and so that's one of the main things that I realized, that I had really hit my lowest of lows. So nothing
yeah.
to take away from the basement living. It saved my life because I was living in my Jeep. So having some place to lay my head was a true blessing. So, but yeah, that was the bottom.
It
Mhm.
sounds like the dark space is literal and metaphorical. And when I think
Yes.
about it that way, some environments that I also was, I wouldn't say forced, but if I made different decisions, I could have been somewhere else, right? I could have
Yeah.
stayed where I came from, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and places that I was grateful enough to have been able to occupy,
Right.
although it was not preferred. They were literally dark. And I do believe that they played a part in the spiritual, emotional, financial darkness that I was also experiencing at that time.
Great point.
Did it contribute to the fact that people were dying or relationships were ending? Not really. However, what I did in reaction to those things, I do believe the decisions, or the decisions I made in those spaces played a part. So that's
Absolutely.
and that just goes to show our environment really plays a part, not just on our emotions, but physically, right?
Physically. Yeah. Yeah.
Open the curtains more.
Yes. Yes. To turn the light on. If you're in a dark space, first things first, turn the light on.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's ironic because some of those spaces that I had gotten so dark and so absent from caring for myself, I wasn't even paying the light bill. So, that's how dark it had gotten. Even if I
Mm,
wanted to turn the light on, it wasn't an option.
mhm,
And so, but then there was still candles. There's always light. I think back now, even when I just said that, I said it was dark, but I had plenty of candles, and I put them on. So
mhm,
just in an attempt to, just dig my way out of that darkness. Because for me, uh, my hope never stopped. I never stopped hoping. I knew that I was better than where I was right then. I just didn't know how to get out of it. It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I was like, the darker it got, the more I felt bad about myself, the more I felt bad about myself, the more, it got darker. And it was just, like I said, it was almost never ending. And
mhm,
that's why I was saying to myself, self-development and reading more of the word, it started to turn on the light for me.
mhm.
Yeah, 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 yeah. This is a
Yes.
really great conversation.
Yeah, it reminds
Has
me of
been.
that makes me think that some of my lights may have looked like, starting to journal, or like I said, I would go outside sooner, maybe,
Okay.
some of those things would have been like those little sprinkles of light, while we're
Yes.
in that moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes, what the
Um,
dark space, and then we don't nobody wakes up in the morning and wants to just be in the darkness all day, right? And this is
yeah,
all metaphorically and literally, right? We don't
yeah,
want it to always be dark, but we don't always know what to do, right? And we just look
yeah,
for ways to escape, like trying to find other places to feel or other places to be or other feelings to have,
yeah.
some kind of escape.
And it's
Um,
so funny you mentioned that, here, because the phrase coping mechanism comes to mind when you said that. And for me, I had negative coping mechanism. So
mm,
when I used them, it got darker. And I until recently when, when this journey started, did I realize that coping mechanisms, and some people also call habits, I also always associated a habit with something negative. But during this journey and even the development and the reading that I've been doing, that there are healthy habits, just like there are healthy coping mechanisms. And we'll delve into that, as we continue on this journey with you, just talking about some of the things that we started using early in our journey and to this very day. I mean, up until this morning, I still use. One of them is music, but like I said, get into that a little bit
Mhm.
further as we get deeper. Okay.
Yes.
Um, let's see.
And we don't always heal. Sometimes we distract.
Okay, okay.
I think coping mechanisms when it's the word distraction reminds me of a versatile word, right? It could be good or bad because coping
Right.
mechanisms, it can sound negative, right?
Mhm.
We get to grow through things to realize we can have positive coping
Yeah,
mechanisms and positive triggers. And
yeah,
the word that comes to mind right now is the distraction. Sometimes we
yeah. I
distract.
like that. I like that because when you're distracted, like it's almost saying like you have somebody looking at this hand while this hand is doing something really maybe that it's not supposed to be doing. This hand is not doing something that it's maybe not supposed to be doing. And it is a distraction. And it takes away from you actually focusing on what you need to focus on so that you can gain the power and the strength that you need to gain from that actual entity or that actual source. I like that. The source that will really take you out of the darkness. And so for
Mhm.
me, that distraction took on the form of alcohol uh, and
Mm.
and people, specifically men. Um, and so with the alcohol part, I mean, it's actually almost self-explanatory. I don't know what show you look at. There's so many shows that when people get stressed or when people actually, if it's a good time, a bad time, or any time, you see somebody with a drink in their hand and somehow the conversations that they're having gets a little easier, and then after a couple more drinks, you don't even know why you even were upset. But all of those things come back to the fact that when you wake up that next morning, that issue and that problem is still there. And sometimes it has gotten bigger. And so those distractions if you stay distracted for long enough, that original issue or that original source that you needed to work on has gotten so big that, it's out of control. And, and as far as the people is concerned, um, I was a people pleaser. I felt that through the joy of others, somehow it would bring light to my life. And I spent a lot of time, you know, hoping that if I made, a certain person or even my family members, it doesn't have to be a man or whatever, but that was the focus most of the time. But if I made someone happy, that somehow that their happiness would transfer over to me. Of course, that never happened, and I didn't do anything but get tired and feel used up. And so um, those distractions from, you just working on yourself and be the best version of yourself is something that I now know is really the source of my joy and my happiness. And I'm working on it every day. It is no end it's really no end to this because as you grow and you become, then your level of expectation for yourself is higher and then you take that to the next level. So yeah. So Kira, that's a good word to use, distract. So what were you using to avoid feeling?
I would say I kept busy. I did keep busy, because I would be lying if I said every time I had to avoid something, it was always a smoking or this or that. Sometimes I just kept busy. I worked long hours. I did crazy stuff. I remember a time where me and one of my coworkers both disliked our at-home situation so much, unknowingly, unbeknownst to each other. we were competing for, like, who could work the most hours, right? We literally were always at work, like, and it was
Yes, yeah.
a service job, a restaurant job, right? So we were you can work as much as you want, long as they're open, and we opened and closed that restaurant for weeks at a time, during one of my dark seasons, and it was fun. I did not look like I was growing through what I was going through, but I was, and so busyness, work, and then what used to be my pride and joy, Imma say smoking, um, I definitely overindulge there. It's one thing to do things socially and recreationally. I do not knock anyone who does that. I do find the power in being able to acknowledge if and when that may not be you. And whether it's for a season or forever, whatever it is, the introspection that's required that to figure out, okay, what am I really doing? Why am I really doing this? Because distractions don't always feel like distractions. They feel like life until we
Yes.
start to think
Mhm.
about the things we may have missed out
Ooh,
on, right?
yes, yes, yes.
Let's
That's
see.
special.
So
That's
yeah, those
perfect.
are the things I use, and that's what overindulgence looked like for well,
Mm,
overindulgence specifically looked like overdoing the things I just mentioned, like overdoing, so I was already working, so keeping busy. Overindulgence looks like working more double time, overtime than needed. Overindulging in smoking looks like, as opposed to a social recreational experience, it's because I'm happy, let's do it. Somebody
mhm,
died, oh my God, no, gotta roll it up, right? For any reason at all, and then shifting from any reason at all to no reason at all, to just
yeah, yeah. Just
this is what
because
I'm doing right now. There's no intention behind it. There's no some people do yoga with it and all the thing. There was none of that. I was just out here blowing money and and blowing it down, right?
yeah,
And way too much, like so much that I lost myself. People started to associate that with me. And then it wasn't a good space, and it
ooh,
um, at the time it was, right? Because again, distraction don't feel like a distraction when we in it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
that
yeah,
was deep.
sometimes we don't we should, but sometimes we don't sit in it, right? We should sit in whatever it is we're going through and growing through. And sometimes we don't. A lot of times we try to drown it out.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so powerful because when you say when you sit in it, and don't get stuck, which if you sit in it long enough, you start to identify what that looks like, the patterns that brought you to that. A lot of different things so that when it does, not if it does, when it does come back around, you're better equipped to handle it. And I think that's one of the things that, like you said, with the coping mechanism, life is going to throw all of these different curves at you. And for me, all those curves, I was just getting hit, and I had no way to, dodge and learn how to, really maneuver myself through life. And, once you start to get that foundation, you can do that. So, um,
Yes.
yeah,
Excuse me. It
okay.
sounds like the oh,
No,
what were you gonna
go
say?
ahead. Well, I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, I'm pretty sure you were, but I'm be sure we come back to that too. I love it here. I just
I
wanted to ask
do.
you because you said something. It escapes me exactly what you said, but it reminded me. Um, It sounded like you had gotten into a lesson, and I did wanna to ask about, like, I wanna shift the conversation to what these dark spaces might have been teaching us, right? So
Yeah.
for anybody who may
Yes.
be listening who has had a moment where they're like, "Oh my god, that was me," and maybe they have not learned from it just yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you have time, I do wanna get into maybe what the dark space was actually teaching. Like,
I'm
look
glad.
back, what would you say that season was trying to teach you?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that because really that's what it's all about. Like I said, the takeaways, the growth things. I think the major thing is that I was worthy. You know, I really felt, a lot of things happened and when I was younger, that I just didn't think I was good enough. But I felt like in order for me to take it to the next level, I had to be happy with who I was, right? Then, like, okay, we all wanna work on ourselves, everybody can do things, maybe lose a little weight, go back to school, any of those things, but right at that moment, I had to say, "How I am right now, I am good enough just as I am." I remember somebody saying how you can be perfectly imperfect, and so
Mm,
that's the
mhm,
way I like to feel myself, to be not just back then when what it was that season taught me early on in my journey, but what it is right now, that I'm perfectly imperfect. Um, oh, that I cannot hide. I can't mask. I can't hide from
mm,
what's hurting me. I've got to go through it. Like I said, and everybody's journey through something, it's no time, but when you're stuck. What I mean? You could take, you can take your little slow baby steps, big jumps, run, you can do whatever, but when you're stuck. And so movement is very important. I learned that I'm not a victim.
mm.
I was a victim. Woe is
Mm,
me. Everybody's against me. The whole world's against me. Um, May it have been personal life, work. I could do anything, but it was always the boss's fault. So, um, and the biggest thing is that one of the best things is that I take responsibility for the part that I play in any situation. I have choices.
accountability.
Accountability is life changing. It's so powerful, and that I have choices. You always have choices. See, you think that you don't have a choice because the choice that you want to make is not the choice that you have to make is not the one you want to make. So you think you
Mm,
don't have a choice, but you always have a choice. Leave the job, leave the man, you know. I mean, there's just so many different things, but don't want you always got a choice. As long as you have breath in your body, you always have a choice. And so, yeah, those are the things that season taught me, the season of just the chaos that was my life.
mm. Like you were in survival mode.
Yeah, mhm. Let me
Mm.
ask you something, what strength came from that season for you, Key?
I feel like my answer is meeting somewhere in the middle. Um, I also discovered some accountability, right? The role I played in my own trauma and suffering. Um,
Woo.
complaining about the book, sitting here holding the pen, like,
I know.
what?
Look back on it
Um,
now.
yes, accountability. Um, I discovered some independent. Well, I discovered my dependencies, and then I discovered independence. So
I
maybe
like that.
one is the answer to one, the other is the answer to another. Um, Boundaries, heavy on the boundaries, because once I realized people only allow people only do what you allow them to do. I was like, well, why am I letting people do this, or why am I not letting people know they should do this? Right? How do I need to be treated? And
Right.
and the answer to that is well, and a way to help find the answer to that is looking at taking inventory and how am I treating myself?
Yep.
How do I show up for me? And am I showing up in a way that if other people also showed up for me this way, would I feel shown up for? Right? Am
Yeah.
I giving
Yeah.
myself what I'm
Ab-
expecting from other people? Um, and I realized that I wasn't. I wasn't. I was giving them what I was expecting from them,
Mhm.
but I wasn't giving it to myself. And then there was a gap. Um, so yeah, I some strength and discoveries consist of accountability, boundaries, and both of these consist of emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually. Like I believe in being able to be submissive in a relationship, but there's a
Mhm.
fine line between submissive and dependent, right? So I
Right.
established those and discovered my independency, and realizing that. I wasn't value comes to mind, right? And I wasn't
Mhm.
looking for value, but I also wasn't valuing myself, so I wasn't
Right.
feeling valued, but I did feel needed, and I had to realize feeling needed and being valued are not the same.
No, you're not.
They're not the same.
That's a
So I
great
guess
point.
I discovered some self-value, which also is self-worth, right?
Yeah.
Um, a lot of things actually, boundaries, self-worth, accountability, um, reflection, so many things. Now that I'm thinking through them out loud with you here in the becoming room, being needed is not the same as being valued.
Yeah.
And I believe if and when we understand that, it can be a stepping stone. That's not the only first place to start. Um, but it is a great place to start. And that's where I
Oh,
started
yes.
and it helped me it's like I was in like this work the wait period, and then I started to become, and that's what at the forefront. And realizing being valued is not the same as being needed, and that being for other people and for myself. Um,
Yes, I love that.
yeah.
Now, did we talk about what kind of specific boundaries exist today that you might,
Mm,
because of those dark spaces?
I would say being in the moment is the experience.
Okay.
The boundary would be, if I had to sum it up, I would say access or availability. Because remember, being needed and available. I think I skipped the word available, but we talked through it right. Being needed and available is not the same as being valued, right? So
Right.
my availability, valuing my time,
Right.
whether
Mm.
that looks like I wouldn't say I'm as tedious as my family and friends have to book an appointment to speak with me. It's not that, but it's when I am taking time for myself or a dedicated uh experience or happening, just being very intentional with being in that. And that may look like missing some phone calls, missing some text messages. Um and the growth in that is not the growth isn't, well, I'm so unbothered. I just can ignore people. It's more so realize I get to be intentional with my time and that allows me to be unapologetic in a very respectful way because I still love and care about and respect the people trying to reach me when I'm in that time. Right. But the boundary is being able to pour into myself consistently and uninterrupted.
Yeah.
And then again, that may look like missing some phone calls, some text messages, some emails, some outings, some events, or changing my mind about commitments, um,
Right.
or doing inventory before I even commit to a
And
commitment,
before you
right?
commit
Like
into,
not
yeah, I like that.
overbooking myself or
Right.
not over promising and under delivering,
Right.
right?
Right. And
So
I
yeah, I
like
think
that.
that
I
might have
love
been
that.
more than one example. Sorry.
Oh, no, 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 but it flowed because what I got out of that was, like, consistency is the key, whatever you do, people who love you, people who, know you and care about you as long as you are consistent, they know that that's the way that you are living your life right now, and nothing is personal. It's just about if I don't think about me and you don't think about me, like nobody's thinking about me. So that's another thing
Hello.
that, yeah, that's a good point too. For me, yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. I don't know how many boundaries that I could speak on, but as they come, I know when a feeling. I know when I say, "Oh, okay, I have to," I had to set some, parameters about this, and so I'm really learning about the boundaries as well. I can't name them straight off like you are, but in my journey, that's one of the main things that I really, really wanna learn how to do. Put very consistent and not it doesn't have to be rigid and specific, but ones that feel good to me. Yeah. And it's
Mhm.
like I said, it's nothing personal. It's nothing to hurt anybody and stick to them and be consistent about it, so yeah.
Yes, gotta stand on it.
Mhm.
Stand on it. It sounds like it's a lot of life has been full of seasons we probably would love to reminisce on, and a lot of places we also would not be going back to.
Yeah, yes.
Would not be going back to. Since we're not going back there, what are some like lessons or wisdom those seasons or that season might have left behind for you?
The order of importance key. Yeah, I really learned that I have to put God first in my life, and then after God is me, and then others. I had things all twisted around before. I would put people first, then I would pray to God, and then it would be myself. Um, never was self first, but now I know if God is first, all things good flow from that. And so I really, really love the way that I'm growing through that because I wasn't raised in the church. And so God is just so new and fresh. And I just know his love for me and that helps me to be a better person, and then once I'm a better person, it helps me, to be a better person for others, so that's really the wisdom that I gained out of that dark season.
It sounds like I wouldn't go there, but I thank God for what I learned there.
Yeah,
That's
yes,
what it
yes,
sounds like.
yes, it is. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it made the order of importance right there and at the forefront. Yes, it did, Kate.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, what thank you for answering that question. Like what lessons the season might have left behind? Because that it makes me wonder what signs told you that your healing had even started.
Wow. Um Wow, that's so cool, kid, 'cause I started to forgive myself. I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and I started being grateful for all things, because all those things that I went through, good, bad, big, or small, they helped me get closer to him. What about you, Keith?
Signs that healing has started.
Yeah.
So first it started, right?
Yes.
first, first it just started. I had no idea. Um,
Was it a perspective shift?
y- yeah,
Kinda.
I would
Okay,
say
okay.
yeah. There's two. Can I describe two moments? There's not really a thing. But so I started to change, right? I started moving my body, getting active, doing little things like getting more sunlight, opening the curtains, eating better, just doing the things, right? So I was doing them, but when I was doing them, they didn't feel like healing. They I, they felt like just what I was doing, right?
Okay.
But there was a time um where I had an opportunity to to share a little bit about myself, right? And a little bit about me. I've gone through anger management like 3 times. And well, I'm gonna say 2. The first 2 were definitely anger management. I did not finish. I got there and it was always what makes you angry? Whatever. And then, for one reason or another, the second one I was in, it got downsized or it moved. Something happened, and I was placed somewhere else. Uh, this all court mandated, by the way. We'll get into that. We always got to keep coming back to the room.
Yes,
There's room for
yes.
everybody here. So yeah, the one I ended up in that facilitator never asked me what made me angry, what made me upset, what was your charge. She never asked us any of those things. She always asked us about what does the best version of ourselves look like, or what are you grateful for today? And we started to practice the things, right? So again, even while I was in that, it did not feel like healing. One day when I shared with someone that I had gone through anger management and I described that difference, I was like, actually, the one I actually finished that wasn't even anger management. I feel like I was just learning how to manage myself, right? So, but when I was in it, I was still stubborn, mad that I'm there, but still doing the stuff because I have to and I got to get my paper signed. But when I had a chance to reflect on that experience, I realized, wow, I was. I was healing through that, and although it was court mandated and all the things, maybe that was the path I was able to go so I could get what I actually needed, because
Yeah.
the first time I went to anger management was not part of that process, and I did not
Right.
land in a healing self-management space,
Right.
right? So I had to go through some stuff
That's
to
right.
really end up where I was supposed to be. And being able to reflect on the difference in those experiences. Um, Maybe it was less than a year after that anger management or emotional management course had ended. So less than a year, I
Right.
was able to let someone know, just telling them the differences in them, and then we was able to unpack. Wow, I had already started doing the things, and then the space I landed helped me bridge those gaps, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a sign for me once I realized the difference and how I was able to come out on the other side of a self-management, uh, course as opposed to anger management, because
Anger
it's
management.
more than one emotion than anger,
Yeah.
right? I think the problem was I had so many and I didn't know what to
Yeah.
do with
What
them.
to do with them.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
so cool. I mean, just to think about just, on in his Ross Farm, you changing the name of a course or something could actually change the way in which, because when you said anger management, then you said emotional management, that one sounded more developmental, more, getting into a space of growth as opposed to, anger management, which, meant just to keep it down. It had a whole, when I heard it, it just had a whole different vibe to it. So,
Mhm. And
yeah.
that the course itself, it was still called anger
Right.
management.
I
It
know.
was the experience and what I
What you
got
called
from
it.
it.
Yeah. That's what you
Yes,
cause
yes,
it.
and
Yeah.
probably what they should call it, because more
Yes.
people would probably come.
Yeah, and they'd be open, more open and receptive because that's what I'm saying. It's like when you go in saying, "I'm going to manage my anger," that makes me angry. But if you say, "I'm going to manage your emotions," that says, "Okay, let me see, maybe when I'm instead of being angry, I can be, this or whatever." I like that. That's
Yes.
that's a good way. And that maybe could be the way that we look at our own lives. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
No, don't call it what it, sometimes what you call it is what it becomes. You know what I mean? Like I guess we really gonna have to talk about that later because that just boom. What you call it is what it becomes. You know,
Mhm.
yeah. So if you keep saying that's a bad relationship or that's it might not have been bad when you started calling it. By the time it's done, it's truly a bad one. So I love that. We've got to
Yeah,
definitely talk about that at a later date. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So so let me just ask. Um, Standard question. What does becoming look like this week for you?
This week, becoming looked like keeping the promises I made to myself. Keeping the promises I made to myself, because that's where confidence lives. Confidence lives in the promises that we kept to ourselves. That's what becoming looks like for me this week. What about you?
Okay, it's been a very trying week for me. Um, I have a brother who's extremely ill, and becoming this week for me was just staying in the moment, knowing that everything is going to be okay, no matter what that looks like. It might
Mhm.
not be what I want it to look like. It might not be what I'm expecting, but just to know that either way, it's going to be okay and that God is in control. That's what becoming looks like to me this week.
Mhm. I love that. God is in control. That reminds me of an invitation I've been meaning to extend, and what better time than here on episode 2? uh,
Yes.
I'm inviting because it's something that I know I want to do. I'm inviting you and everybody who's listening to this, no matter when you hear this, no matter where you hear this. I'm inviting you to name one coping mechanism that you may have. And by coping mechanism, remember that can be good or bad. Um, but if there's one you may have been wanting to work on, right? We're going to try to pick one of those. Choose one coping mechanism. And for the next week, just sit in it, right? Just be honest. Don't try to change it. If you have been wanting to stop doing something or to start doing, don't change it. Just acknowledge it
I
and
like that.
sit in it throughout the week. And come back next week prepared to watch our next episode through that lens because sometimes we just need to do a little personal inventory, a little
Yeah,
personal inventory.
I like that. I like that.
Yay.
Okay.
Oh, and speaking of next episode,
Yeah.
we are going to be sure to drop this question in the description. We're going to be sure to answer the question in the description as well. We are going to wrap up here in the room today. So y'all catch us in the comments and the description. But one thing, or a few things I did want to ask, what dark space changed you?
Mm,
I want all of the listeners, what dark space changed you? What lesson did you, what lesson did you carry out of it?
okay.
And are you still growing through it? Or are you growing through it now? And be honest, right? What is that? What is a dark space that changed you? And are you going through something right now? Or are you finally just on the other side where you're growing through it? And just be honest with what that looks like.
And what lessons, what lessons? I
Mm,
really want to hear what you got. I like to read what you guys take your time. I know you guys got a lot of different responses, so we look forward to meeting each and every one of them.
yeah, yes. What did it take from you? What did it teach you? And what version of you was born because of it? And if you want to hear more prompts like that one, there's also going to be a link to the Becoming Guide just below. And in the meantime, remember, healing isn't a destination, becoming is a journey. And until next time, keep
Keep
becoming.
it coming.